everyone, and welcome to Voices of the Industry, a podcast by the AI Localization Think Tank, which aims to bring diverse voices from our industry to engage in a conversation about how AI is impacting what we do today. Today, we are super lucky to have with us Carina Zehetmaier with us. We wanted to invite Carina for a Voices of the Industry interview because she was super helpful when I had to prepare for the panel on AI governance during the AI ThoughtCon last March. I will put a link to the recording of that conference in the video description. So now I'm aware Carina is not a usual face in the localization industry, and that's exactly why we wanted her here. Carina works in law, AI, ethics, and she's the person that many Austrian and also European organizations turn to when they need to make sense of the European Union AI Act. Carina wears many hats. She's a former representative of the European Union and Austria in the United Nations in Geneva. She's the founding woman in AI Austria, a member of the Austrian government AI advisory board, and she is also the co-founder and CEO of a company called paiper.one. So, Carina, you're doing so many interesting things. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with a new audience. What can I add? So as you mentioned, I studied law. Like my background is originally human rights law. This is also why I managed, or my dream was to work actually in the United Nations and find solutions with people from all over the world to make this planet a better place. And what happened then was that my brother studied artificial intelligence in the Netherlands. Actually, you can study AI there since the 1990s. And so he started basically these studies, and then he totally pulled my interest into this direction. And so I started my first AI company 7 years ago, and also the NGO Women in Artificial Intelligence Austria, as you mentioned. And from there, a lot of things have happened, and I'm very proud and yeah, also very challenged as CEO and co-founder of paiper.one, where we help companies, organizations with our platform to basically monitor and assess risks of AI systems before implementation, while implementation, and to also train entire workforces for trustworthy AI understanding.
That's great. I think maybe we can focus a little bit more on the work that you do at paiper.one. So if a company wants to approach you and they have these questions around the European Union AI Act and how to be compliant, how does the typical engagement with paiper.one customer look like?
Mm-hmm. Actually, so funnily, many clients come to us because of the EU AI Act or legal requirements. However, what we very rapidly get into is the broader implications of AI. Actually, there's really important questions we have to ask ourselves. How do we take decisions in times of uncertainty and technological speed? Who's responsible if something goes wrong? Who takes the decisions what is allowed? If I am an employee, how do I know what's right and wrong, and whom am I going to ask? And this is basically the questions around governance. So there is this compliance part, which is complying to the laws. And then there is this organizational part to it, understanding that we need to have a structure in place that allows us to control AI systems, that allows us to empower people to actually take responsibility for their actions. Because as you know, AI systems are sometimes also referred to as black boxes,
Yeah.
which means that even the ones who are developing them, they cannot fully understand why a certain result is the output. And so we're dealing with systems that take decisions on our behalf that may have great impacts on our lives or on society without fully understanding how the decision comes together. This means we need to invest much more in how do we test, evaluate the outcomes, and therefore we also need a lot of diverse expertise to make sure these systems are very robust and solid. And this is basically what we help companies to do. So on the one hand, to comply to the laws by doing the technical organizational measures, but on the other hand, also to think in a change perspective and help companies to understand that a lot depends on the values you set as a company, where you're gonna how you're gonna take the decisions and where you're gonna be in the future and how you're gonna take employees with you on this transformational journey.
And I guess that complex environment, in order to, even if it's only to be compliant, but also to apply and to transform the company in the right way to be able for everybody to use AI, you also offer many different modules, right? There's the compliance assistant, but there's also a government platform, some kind of tracker, some AI in education, right? So I think all these little pieces that you offer through the company come together to make a company compliant and to make a company successful in how to implement AI, right?
Maybe to, yeah, exactly, to explain this a bit further. So what we see is that many companies operate with employee, like you have some employees being engaged, others who don't really care, others who are afraid, and the engaged ones, they do something, but very often it's not centralized. So you as an organization, you are liable whenever your employees use AI to fulfill their tasks. And so, in order to calculate risk and minimize the liability, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you have standards in place, guidelines that basically tell the employees what they are allowed to do and what not, which information they are allowed to enter, where and where not, how to control the outputs, and whom to turn to if they have questions. And then from there, this is only one part, right? So this could be a document where you write it down. And then it depends on how big the company is, obviously. So if you're a small player, you might be able to have one person in charge who is kind of the head of AI or AI ambassador or whatever. However, if you're a big organization, it's very likely to be a team who is handling
Yeah.
these complex questions about AI, the AI office, and who is in the team. This again depends a lot of companies on the companies. So you might have you definitely have someone from the technical perspective, cybersecurity, data protection, compliance, legal. Then we know AI only works if you have domain expertise. So you might have, depending on the different topics, the domain experts, which you need to even make sense out of AI applications. And so you see that it gets like from a document, which is good in a very small setting, to really make sure an entire workforce is basically on track,
Yeah.
can be quite challenging. And therefore, it needs quite some organizational steps, processes, documents, responsible people, basically. And that's what we try to bring together in our software to basically have a central point. We call it operation system for AI, actually. So have it all in one place and basically control and navigate AI in a safe approach from there.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of people that need to be in that AI core team, from compliance, from IT, from data. but I guess also somebody from HR or somebody that's in charge of
Mm-hmm.
literacy and enablement. It's also a key role. You can have the best technology, you can have all your data super
Mm-hmm.
clean, but if people are not using your tools, then why do you even have tools in the first place? It needs to be used by humans, and somebody needs to teach those humans how to use the tools. So I think it's very robust approach to how to tackle all this transformation, touching all these different points. I wanted to ask, because compliance is, of course, a difficult topic in the sense that it's either you are compliant or you are not. And in that sense, I feel like a lot of people in our audience have heard about the European Union AI Act. We've talked about it in conferences over the past couple of years, but I don't know if everybody has actually read it or interiorized the content, what's in there. If you can give us a 90-second version of how this AI Act works and what's required for businesses or users or people who deploy AI, some highlights.
Mm-hmm. So the main understanding is that the law has a risk-based approach. So just as we discussed so far, AI has to do a lot with people, and this is also why, because some say, why are we regulating technology?
Yeah.
Because artificial intelligence is more than a technology, it's a complex socio-technical system with a lot of implications on our life, society, and so on. And so basically, we look at the concrete use case, and this is very important for a company to understand. It's not the software I'm licensing, it's what I'm doing with the software, so the use case. And then you take a use case and you evaluate it and check which risk level does apply. And so which risk levels do we have? We have the AI systems that they are actually not problematic. They will not affect rights. So the majority of the use cases, the bottom of the pyramid, basically is completely free to use without any limitations. And to give you an example, this would be eventually even translation in a not sensitive topic. It could be also Netflix recommending another TV show, Spotify, and so on. And then you have another layer of the risk pyramid, which is the transparency layer or the limited risk. And basically, this applies everywhere where we do not know anymore. Are we interacting with an AI system or with a human? Then this needs to be basically, there needs to be a mark on it. Or we need to know that the chatbot needs to say, hi, I am chatbot XY, and I'm here to help. And also when we create content like deepfakes, AI generated content, how do we deal with that? When do we have to basically mark it as AI generated and when not? And then there is the high risk, and this is basically the heart of the law. It's use cases that we want to have because they can have a great impact for society. But we know if we don't control them, we risk really big damages, violation of our rights, even our lives eventually. So this would be everything with critical infrastructure, security components everywhere where health and fundamental rights and security are at risk. And also these questions like who gets the job, who gets invited for a job interview, who gets the insurance, who gets the loan, self-driving cars, everything in the public, or a lot, not everything, a lot of services in the public sector, in the criminal justice, and so on. And so this is sensitive cases. We need to have regulation around there.
Yeah.
And this is what we basically, or one thing that we do as paiper.one, we help you to categorize, and then high risk has a lot of compliance to do to make sure the systems are actually safe. And then on the top, there is the prohibited use cases, the ones we do not want as a society in Europe. So like being, like mass surveillance without a
Mhm.
reason, predictive policing. So basically, the police knows that you're going to offend before
Yeah,
you know it yourself. So this kind of also, like classifying people
yeah.
into
Social
sensitive
targeting.
aspects, targeting exactly. And so this is going to be prohibited. And I think that's very good that it's prohibited. I would even say it's too weak because there is always some little words that lawyers can fight about what they actually mean in the end. And then there's also rules for general purpose AI systems. So basically, that's the generative AI systems, the ones like all the ones we know, the models behind and the systems, so ChatGPT,
Mhm.
Claude, uh, Copilot, Lucet from Mistral, and so on. So
Mhm.
they have a specific set. And now the complexity is that next to these risk levels, there are roles. So you as a company can have a role, for example, as a provider, meaning you bring the service on the market, and so on, you develop it, and you can be a deployer. And basically, and there's more rules, but this is the more two main rules. And the thing is, the complexity basically is that you can have more roles and more risk levels at the same time per use case. And this makes it very tough to, like just have an Excel and write into it, we do this, so this, da, da, da. And it makes it very hard to administer. So you can have different risk levels and different roles. And
Uh-huh.
depending on risk and role, you need to do different obligations like risk management, quality management, human in the loop, and so on and so on.
It is complex indeed, and I think it's also a topic that's very much discussed inside the language industry. So on this topic, we are talking a lot about, so if a translation is produced by AI, and imagine that after the translation is produced by AI, we have also the human in the loop. We have a person checking, post-editing that content. But there's, at the end of the day, there's a critical error, a patient that's harmed, or a contract that's misinterpreted, or something collapses because of that mistranslation. Then who is liable? Is it the freelancer, so the human in the loop, or is it the person that ordered doing that translation while using AI? And also following up on the second risk level that you mentioned, the transparency layer. If it's done with AI and then you add a human in the loop, is it still needed to add this mark of done by AI and then proofread by a human? Or which percentage of the content needs to be retouched by a human so that it's not AI anymore? How, where is there a clear line here, or it's all very blurry still?
Let me start with the
Yeah.
second question.
Okay.
Actually, I think your audience is not only in Austria, but we have in what we did for the EU AI Act is to implement a help desk, a service desk, and it's at our tele-regulation. And I just maybe we can add the link to the show notes.
Sure.
But it's a really cool link, and it's also available in English. They did a great job in explaining the law with graphics and in a very simple way. And also, now when I'm explaining to you the transparency obligations, I'm actually having their designs in my head. And so the basic rule is that, deep fakes, meaning images that or videos and so on that could voice that could be a real person. So either it's from a real person, an existing one, or it could be confused with a real person, real place, real setting. They need to be labeled as AI generated. If now you're just doing a translation, This is also interesting from the copyright perspective. Although I want to say here that I studied law, and in English I'm allowed to call myself a lawyer, in German not. But just to say this, I cannot give legal advice. But this is what I read up, and happy to discuss further. So don't take it for granted what I'm saying. But for the copyright, it's very interesting because there's a lot of discussion, can AI generated content be copyrighted? And the consensus is that it's very hard to get copyright on AI generated content. However, if you have an original text that was written by a human, then this text belongs to the human. And so now if you're just translating it, it still is the copyright of the human. At least is as I know, is the leading opinion that you keep the copyright even if you translate it with AI. But then you lose basically what happens is the model is trained, and if you use publicly available tools, it means that your copyright goes one-to-one into the training material. This is another discussion. And so now if you use AI for translation, or for generating texts in general, you do not have to mark it as AI generated. You only need to mark them as AI generated under the condition that no human is looking at them, and they could influence public opinion on critical topics. So
Okay.
basically, every time I take the ownership of, or I am basically responsible, so my company knows I'm the one who's in charge of this, and I am the one who, ticks off the box and says done. I
Mm-hmm.
am the one who's basically responsible for it. And this leads to the first question that you asked.
Yeah.
So uh, as long as you have this human in this text generation part that ticks the box and says text done, that's it. You don't need to put the AI label on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it means you are responsible. So what does this mean in practice? I would say generally, obviously, you are working for a company. So the first one to be liable for an error would be your company. And then the question is, has the company, so the client would basically sue the company for a bad, or say to tell the company we're not going to pay because it was a bad translation. Now we have a damage in email, an image.
Mm-hmm. Branded.
Reputation
Yeah.
damage, brand damage, exactly. And so now we want you to pay 10K, or I don't know. And so what would happen is, or what could theoretically happen, is that in some cases the organization is liable,
Yeah.
but then you could be in a second in a it's called in German regress, but you could the employer could
Mm-hmm.
somehow get back to the employee, but also only if the organization invested in your training, gave you the
Uh-huh.
guidance what to do, what not to do, and so on. So it's going to be very hard for an employer to argue that you made a mistake if he did not guide you and not train you and not put any effort into you. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
and this also brings us, so this is why it's so important as an organization to set up a governance and a structure,
Yeah.
because it has to do with liability. If you did not guide your people, you did not train them. And I mean, even worse, imagine someone uses publicly available tools and enters sensitive data like intellectual property or data protection. These are huge issues, and they would really damage the reputation of a company next to damages on a legal
Mm-hmm.
side.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to make sure that your employees are trained. And then from what you said, I want to make one last point. I am actually very worried about I'm not sure if I invented it, but I've not looked it up whether it exists. But I call it a bit liability washing, or responsibility washing. That's how I call it in
Uh-huh.
German, Verantwortungswashing. So you take the human in the loop, and then he or she is responsible. But The problem is if the person is not trained, if the system gives you just output yes, no, if you are under time pressure, and especially with translation services, I've heard, for example, that now in the for home care, often these jobs are done by women mostly who do not speak German in
Mm-hmm.
our setting. And so now they have these documentation tools and they actually document in their own language. The tools translated to German, and then the person needs to say a tick that this is correct, but that the person can't even speak German. So how can this person be responsible for the content that is actually standing there if the person is not qualified to
Exactly.
actually challenge the output?
Yeah.
And so I see this is a big societal problem where we are getting to, that companies will try to do everything, or everyone will try to put it on the smallest in the chain, or the
Yeah.
weakest in the chain, and make them the responsible ones. But I'm pretty sure that we will see in the judgments of the courts that are going to come that a human in the loop, human in control command does not mean that you need to make sure that the human can actually do give a qualified comment or accept or not accept
Yeah.
the decision of the AI system. Yeah?
And that was actually a follow-up question I wanted to ask you, because many times there's always a project manager for every translation project, but maybe you're managing a project for 52 languages. You don't speak for sure those 52 languages, so maybe you can check that the files are completed, that there's more or less the same amount of pages, something like that, but you cannot verify that the content is actually accurate in any way, at least in 52 languages. So there's a human putting the tick, but
Mm.
what's the value of that tick in that regard? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I mean, a big tech company told me recently, not like, yeah, let's call it tech company, but not big tech as you think about it. Another also like producing, like fridges and so on. And they were, I was at a conference and they actually presented on stage. I mean, they said also that's not best practice, but that's what happened, that they had for a global position 1,000 applicants. So they had AI screen the applicants,
Yeah.
and then they put an intern to basically tick the 980 that they did not look at, just to make a tick that a human was in the loop. And this cannot be human in the loop or human in control command, and this would not last in front or hold in front of a court, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, actually, we really will have to think a lot in the coming years. How can we establish responsibility?
Yeah.
And as you said, it's the same if I'm handling 51 languages. There is this element of trust. You need to trust that there is underneath you people who did their job or who qualified. But I mean, especially in the world of AI, I can only use the generative AI systems for creative tasks, for getting inspirations for new things, or if I want to use them for really going into a topic, I need to have the competence of
Yeah.
verifying whether the outcome is true and whether actually it also represents my value setting and so on. And if I cannot do it, I will have to do a lot of research and critical thinking to make sure that the outcome is correct in the sense that I need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's surreal with and without AI to think that one project manager can control 51 languages. But it's a super example for AI usage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And actually, when you mentioned that maybe an intern is not the best qualified person to tick if those job applicants were the correct ones to pass to the next round or not, I actually thought there's also a debate in the translation world about, because when we use AI and then we add the human in the loop, it's called a post editor, and post editors are also having a lower rate than a translator. So it's a way of cutting down costs. We assume, like, we pay them less per word produced because we assume that they can produce more words per hour. So we decrease the rate by assuming that they are increasing the productivity. That is the logic behind that. There's debate. But at the end of the day, we are also making them responsible for the final output while we are decreasing the rate. So, and we are decreasing the rate because we assume that they are just going to be fast. So if they are fast, maybe they pay less attention to errors, to mistranslations, to etc. And so would that's also like having an intern. You just want somebody that does it cheap and fast to tick the box of there was a human here. I wonder if this whole workflow that we have created in the translation industry will hold with this model of we have a human in the loop and now this person is responsible when we are paying them less and forcing them to be faster. It's
Actually,
also,
already doesn't make sense in my head that you pay less for more outcome, but for more produced words. But anyway, to compare it, I just read, so I'm a lawyer by training, right? I'm not working in a firm or something, but I read a super interesting article in the Handelsblatt. And actually, they showed how, or one lawyer was explaining how the process of her work has changed. So usually you get the case and then you start research for hours, right? You need to find all the documents, the commentaries, and so on. And then you try to put it together and da 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 da. Now it's exactly the opposite, the way lawyers are working, or the lawyers of the future, the next few years are working. They ask their internal, pre-trained for legal Austrian law, in my case, specified systems, about they describe the scenery. The better they describe the case, the better the outcome. And then they get the first proposal, basically. And from there, they go and do the research, but they are already much more targeted. So no one, I think, I mean, for lawyers, it's also very interesting because, we are like translators, lawyers, tax advisors are paid per time. So I think this entire business model of paying per time is somehow disrupted and will at some point collapse. And but I think nobody would. The questions we're having in the legal sphere is rather how can someone become the one who can even then validate?
yeah.
How can you become that expert to validate? Also in the medical sphere, right? And because if you're only validating anymore, but somehow it makes you even higher level. So
Yeah.
it's the opposite of what you are explaining, that they are getting less paid. It's the one in the higher rank who can better work with these tools. But it's very interesting to look abroad
Uh-huh.
the sectors and see how they approach it. But if you ask me, I think it doesn't make sense. So I think that the ones who, and also as you said, as we said, it's liability washing. So it really
Uh-huh.
means I'm trying to, or responsibility washing, to have someone the weakest in the chain, and I'm putting the end responsibility on the person.
Yeah.
And also, the better the systems get, the more we need to be able to just, that's how the work changes, I think. Like it's just a transformation of the jobs.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for those inputs, Carina. I think we would be talking about these topics for hours, and we certainly need to fix a date in our calendars to grab another coffee one day.
I have
But
one more. Can I
yes,
say
of
one more
course, go.
thing? So, I invite you all to, because I think it's very inspirational. In customer support, many people have lost their jobs to AI because we know that this works very well. And IKEA took a bit of another approach, and
Ah,
it's a very
yeah.
interesting example because what they did is they said, okay, now we have AI basically doing 60% of customer service. So what do we do with the people? And they retrained them to become remote interior advisors or something in that direction. And with this, they opened a completely new business model to their existing one, and they had a gain in 2025 of 1.3 billion US dollars. So I think that what I observe in the translation sphere is often to focus exactly only on translation and to eventually letting people go without thinking what how is the job transforming and what new opportunities are opening and how can we keep people and try to open entire new branches actually. And I think
Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
going to be the challenge for the next few years for the translation industry to not miss out on opportunities simply, firing people instead of looking how could we utilize this expertise for new products.
I love the way you're finishing this interview. Yeah, it's great. It's always great to end with a happy note. Can we, for the listeners who want to know more about paiper.one and you, I will add links to so that people can get in contact with you. So thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your expertise, for helping us navigate a little bit the complexities of the AI Act. And for everyone listening, the links will be in the comments and description below in the YouTube video. And thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was great being here. And thank you for these interesting questions and inputs. I also learned something myself. So
That's great.
it was a pleasure.